Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, managing editor of Canada's podcast, Taking Care of Business, today with Jason Kinnear, who is manager of family office services with the Canadian Western Bank. Thanks for joining us today, Jason.
Thanks for having me, Mario.
Well, let's talk about real estate investment. And I know a lot these days, a lot of people are, besides buying a home to live in, many are often buying homes or properties to rent out. And you know, if I'm that type of person that I'm looking at that, what would you suggest to them about the type of residential property that they should invest in?
It's a great question. Because of what's been happening in the market over the past several months, we've had a lot of clients asking us these types of questions. And typically, we kind of look at when we talk to our clients, we ask them sort of what they would feel comfortable with. So there's two sort of essential options for that novice real estate investor. And the first would be to use your own home as a real estate investment. So that could be as small as maybe, doing some upgrades to your house if you think you're going to move in the next little while to help increase the value. So you're actually participating in the market.
Yeah.
Or it could be as a bit more complicated. You could actually build a secondary unit within your principal residence. So you're right there to be able to manage it and keep on top of the tenants. And several municipalities across Canada now are allowing actually laneway homes, which is a fairly new concept here in Canada. And that way you can kind of build a home on your property. And again, it's close to you, so it's easy to manage. There could be other opportunities to actually buy a standalone property in your neighborhood, or it could be anywhere. And that way your tenants are off in a separate property. And there are some additional logistic issues with that, but if the right deal comes along, that could be a great opportunity for you as well.
Okay. Can you talk about, in general, I guess the advantages of investing in real estate? I guess historically, it's pretty good investment.
Sure, there's a great sort of long-term track record with investing in real estate. It's a good way to diversify your net worth. You might be invested in a lot of public market securities, and this could be an additional way to invest for the future. And there's also, in addition to that long-term capital appreciation, with the right property and being managed properly, you can also have current cash flows to assist you with your living expenses. So if your rental revenues are greater than your expenses, that's a cash flow that you can depend upon each month. And there's also certain tax advantages too, because it is a business. So if you've got certain rental expenses, you could write those off against the rental check you get from your tenants every month.
Yeah. Now, one of the important things, of course, is when you're not living in the same place and somebody else is renting, a part of it. How important is it if you're renting out a property to have somebody to manage it, or is that like a top consideration you need to make? Am I going to manage it, or am I going to get somebody to manage it for me?
That's probably one of the most common questions we get from our clients at CWB when they talk about investing in residential real estate is who's actually going to be managing it. So for some clients that are real do-it-yourselfers and are good with the regular maintenance, and they're in a reasonable distance away from the property and they're close to it most of the year, it might make sense for them to manage it on their own. That means that you're in charge of collecting the rent check. You're in charge of vetting the tenants, and if there's any repairs or maintenance that needs to be done,
Yeah.
you're going to be the one responsible. A lot of our clients, though, they travel and they might be south for certain times of the year. So having a professional property manager makes a lot more sense. They have the experience and they have the tools and the know-how to make sure that the property is rented to the right sort of tenants, and that they've got a list of contractors they can use to make the repairs that are needed. So kind of depends on your situation, but I would say most people, especially the novice real estate investor, will probably benefit most by having a professional property manager.
Mm-hmm. And where does it make sense to buy properties for investment in terms of, if you're renting them out? Does it make sense in the downtowns and inner cities of the major cities or suburbs? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So renting a property is a type of business. And so whenever you get into a business, one of the best things you can do at the beginning is decide who's going to be your ideal client. And in this case would be who's going to be your ideal tenant. You want a tenant that's going to be, paying the rent regularly and isn't going to put a lot of wear and tear on the property, so that it'll keep your costs down. So once you decide who your ideal tenant's going to be, it could be university students, it could be young families that can't afford a property on their own at the current time, or it could be we're seeing seniors renting. That's a growing market. So if you decide on who your ideal tenant is, that will help sort of focus on where you want to buy. So if you're going to rent to university students, you probably want to be in the communities around those universities as close as possible. And say, for instance, you want to rent to people that are skiers during the winter and cottagers in the summer. Well, then obviously you're going to choose properties that suit those types of tenants.
Yeah, exactly. Now, whether it's renting a place that's outside of your own living quarters, or whether it's even renting a secondary suite, this is kind of a prime time, isn't it, for the rental market out there? We're seeing strong demand in many ways, and with immigration coming in and that population increase, the demand for rentals is this going to even grow more so in the coming years?
That's what we see, and especially I'm here in the Greater Toronto area, and there's projected a lot of immigration over the next decade, and there's going to be a lot of people that will be moving into the downtown core as well as out into the 416, 905 areas. So there's a big demand for real estate properties, quality real estate properties. So if you can find that area and you can find that ideal tenant, and advertise it in the right channels, you're going to have a great business opportunity going forward.
All right. Well, thanks, Jason, for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Mara.
All right. That was Jason Kinnear, who is manager of family office services for the Canadian Western Bank. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, managing editor with Canada's podcast, Taking Care of Business Today. Thank you for joining us.